What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. Yes, it has been a while. Um, I'm back. If you missed a couple of or earlier last weekend, I did put out a video talking about the futures of this channel along with my other channels, and talking about that I plan on going full time here very soon. If you didn't get that, go back to that. I'll probably have it linked at the end of this video. Yeah, so that's look forward to that. I'm trying to get back into it. I apologize for the little bit of a hiatus, but uh, I'm trying to get back to it. So we got a lot of things to talk about today. I'm gonna try to get as much to it as I can. So I expect at least a few videos today. I might I might have to put some more off until tomorrow. But Anyway, that's the plan. So, um, and I also, one more thing, I have started a shorts kind of series that I've only got a couple of videos out so far, but if you want to go check those out, you can. It's basically I'm calling it To the Point. So basically, it's me doing like the 3 minute shorts here on YouTube. Um, they've been in my car, like on my way to work, or sitting at um, lunch at, at work or whatever. Basically, what I want to do is just quickly get to the point, talking about some kind of breaking news or something that I just want to get off my chest, that I'm, you know, feel like I don't want to wait till this more long format style video. So yeah, that's something that I'm also doing, and we'll be implementing in here and there. It's a way for me to get information to you very quickly and to the, like I said, to the point. Um, uh, Easier for you to digest and all that, than trying to get in this whole setting and make it all formal and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, so thank you very much for joining me here today. What we're going to talk about in this video is basically the economy, this whole tariff war and everything, as we have pretty much just had the craziest week in Wall Street market history, really. And so I want to kind of talk about all that stuff that's been going on and how I feel about it, and uh, just where I feel that we're going, or what we need to be doing instead. So thank you very much for joining me here. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff if you're liking the content that I've been doing, that I do here. And check out my other channels if you have never checked those out. Consider subscribing there and stuff if you like what you see there. And just one-time donations there, Patreon up above there, $3 a month, towards any of the channels, if you'd like. But yes, that's pretty much that. Pretty much that. Okay, so to the point. I'm just kidding. So what we're going to talk about is this. Today, we've been having this major tariff war, right? We had Liberation Day, where Trump come out with these just crazy ass tariffs on basically damn near the entire world. It was crazy, and wind up sinking the markets. And we had multiple days in a row where the market steadily was dropping, and it's just creating such chaos. We come to find out afterwards, I knew when he was showing the little poster there with the percentages and stuff, that those percentages did not make sense. They seemed way higher than what they should have been. I mean, it's not hard to just do a simple Google search or whatever and find sources that show you what our tariff, like what percentage we pay in tariffs to any country. I mean, it's not that complicated to find out, and whether or not we actually are considered to have a surplus or a deficit with a country individually, as much as that really matters. But and it's not hard to see or figure out that, most countries on average really only have about a 5 to 10% tariff on any given item. I mean, there are certain items that are higher or lower, but as an overall percentage, most of the time that overall percentage really isn't no more than 5 to 10%. Because where you might have a handful of goods that have a very high percentage because their particular country is trying to protect against that industry, for their own industry, then you've got tons of other stuff that either has extremely low tariffs or even a lot of cases no tariffs. So it's not like that, and that winds up. So even if you do have certain industries, certain products that have really high tariffs, U.S. even has that. We have really high tariffs on some of our stuff, to prevent or on some items, being imported in to protect some industries within our, country. It's not, this is not something that's new. And this whole argument is making it out like we're just letting everybody in for free, and everybody else is just, we're the victim, and everybody else is just charging us out the ass for everything, and we can't sell anywhere. That's not, it's not at all how any of this works, or how any of it, uh, uh, is traded. Um, so we got that a few days afterwards, that, the calculations and stuff got revealed that they were pretty much not even what percentages that were on those documents, or the charts, were not even tariff percentages at all. They were based in the deficits with that individual country. And it it really took me a little bit of kind of searching, to try to really truly understand, like, the surplus deficit arguments and the different, like, views towards that. And it's not really all like cut and dry, like what we export was what we import from a particular country. Yes, that does create arguably like a deficit or a surplus, um if you're looking solely at goods provided versus goods, received. So, like, basically, if we are buying more from them than they are buying from us, then that looks like there's an unfair trade there, just on the surface. But understanding that, we are the biggest economy in the world, okay, and even though he showed a poster of only like 20, 25 countries, the overall list was over 100 countries. It was, I don't even remember what the exact number was, but it was a whole lot of countries, because we do trade with a lot of countries, a lot of territories, a lot of small islands and things like that. We have little bitty trade, some of which that we have trade, like agreements with, and some that we kind of don't even have trade agreements with, but we still trade with them on a just sort of like honest basis. And it to understand, like, if you have to rationale, like, that these places are very small, their economies are very small, so there's no way in the world that they are going to be able to buy from us as much as we buy from them. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. You know, we might be able to import, and the reason why we import those kinds of things, we buy from them, is because those things cost less and for us to get and access. And our products, though, usually cost more. So it's hard to get a small economy, a place where, they don't have the, like, income or whatever to be able to buy stuff from us. They can't just buy all kinds of products from us. So it's clearly, we're going to, it's going to look like we have, if you're just looking at raw number, it's going to look like we have a deficit. And that's going to be with a lot of countries. I mean, like most countries, because we are such a massive economy. And that's basically what those numbers on that list were reflecting. But the formula even that they were using was errored. It wasn't really even the way that formula should have been. And it, from what I understand, it was basically calculating um, four times what, up to four times what any given country's actual like tariff percentage, you could argue, um, was on any good that we actually buy from them. So, or they would buy from us rather. So if you, because of one particular part of the formula was timed by 4 instead of times by 1 or whatever the case. Anyways, it should have been actually, when they get to dividing down the numbers to get the percentage, it should have actually been divided by 4 instead of, or should have been, yeah, something like that, divided by 4 instead of 2 or whatever the hell it was. Anyways, it was errored. And so, a particular country, I think it was, they were stating like maybe Taiwan or Vietnam, that was like at 40 something percent, like 46 or 47%. If the calculation had been done correctly, in a more the way that it should have been done, it would have calculated it more around 12.5%, which would have been closer to what the actual tariff percentage was, even though their calculation wasn't even based on tariffs to begin with. It was based on the deficits. But and it would have made much more sense. But they calculated, the calculation was all wrong. Everybody was basically inflated in the percentage of so-called tariffs that they were charging us. And then, of course, our argument was that we were giving them half of that. So it was trying to make us look good that we were only tariffing them a half of what they were supposedly tariffing us, when they weren't tariffing us at those percentages at all. So, so in hindsight, we were like tripling, quadrupling our tariff percentage over theirs. So it was really just crippling everybody. And then there was, I think, close to 100 of those countries that we technically have surpluses with. Like most of those small countries or territories and stuff, we actually have surpluses with. And the way you think about that is that, like, you can look at raw number and argue surplus versus deficit, if we are receiving more or less or whatever the case. But in a equal trade kind of look at it, which if you look at it year over year, if as long as the trading is going up, so there's a percentage going up on both sides, really. Where we are actually selling more year over year and we're receiving more year over year, then that technically can be considered a surplus, because basically both the demands are going up. So we are climbing year over year. And so there's technically a surplus. Even if we, raw number are like buying way more than they are buying from us, that should be rationed out because of our difference in size of our economies. But as long as our trade growth is going up, then that is technically a surplus. If we are year over year going down, then that would be technically a deficit, because we are losing trade with that particular country. And it, could be either way. If to say year over year, they're buying, they're selling more to us, but but year over year, they're buying less from us, then that would be considered a deficit. But if, in the flip side of that, it could even be considered a deficit on their end rather than ours. So it's way more complicated than just looking at raw numbers. So a lot of these countries, we are growing year over year on our trading, so therefore it's considered a surplus. And yet we were, targeting these. A lot of those countries were getting targeted at that flat 10%, which actually then is going to create a deficit with that country, because they can't afford that 10% tariff. They already have a hard enough time being able to afford what they do buy from us, but then you tack on a 10% tariff, that just makes it almost even harder for them to do so. So it's really not making any sense whatsoever to tariff countries that we technically have a surplus with. We are technically growing. You're going to wind up causing an actual reduction in the trade numbers with that particular territory, country, or whatever in the long run because they can't afford our goods. It's really just unnecessary and ridiculous. So that's what was happening on that front. Well, then you turn around and right before the tariffs were supposed to go into effect, or right after, I think it was right before they were to go into effect, or right, maybe it was a little bit a day after they went into effect. He comes out saying that we were going to, put a pause on because I've had like whatever he said, 75 countries supposedly calling him and trying to make a deal or whatever. And this was what he did on the official announcement. We'll talk about other talks that he had as well further into this. Because of that and the good spirit or whatever, he was going to give a 90-day pause for talks and stuff like that to be made on all countries except for China. And actually also Mexico and Canada, which is a whole different story. That's a whole different thing. That's even outside of this particular tariff argument. Our tariffs on Mexico and Canada kind of still remain in place. This is like more, if you want to consider it like international trading, where if you would consider Mexico and China, Mexico and Canada more like domestic, I guess, because we are attached to them in a weird way. I think that's the way Trump looks at it. So, and because China was coming back at us, China was arguing, "Hey, look, we're not gonna be into this. So we're going to enforce tariffs on you as well." Basically calling Trump's bluff. And that's what has happened this entire week. Is day after day there has been a leapfrog effect of, well, not even really a leapfrog. China has just been like etching up with us. We'll jump up and then they'll jump up a little bit and then we'll jump up even more and they'll jump up a little bit more. In this kind of tit for tat dick sling contest between the two countries on who's going to tariff each other the most. Which actually, as what came up to this morning, our previous announcement was that, or the last announcement that I actually saw, I just realized that we actually moved it up again since then. But the last one was yesterday, or the day before, one or the other, when he announced, Trump announced 125, moving up from 104, and it was supposed to go to 125. But then there's some kind of correction in that apparently happened afterwards in whatever, I guess maybe it was more of a percentage thing than an actual, I don't know. Anyways, now it's supposedly at 145. So China at 145% on Chinese goods. China was at 84, and early this morning, they announced that they were moving theirs up to 125. So when I heard that announcement, I thought they were actually finally like reciprocating to us directly, but I didn't even realize that we actually jumped it up even higher than 125. So now we sit at 145, 125. And China also, along with that announcement, basically was saying we're not going up any higher because at this point, it's pointless. Like once you've gone over 100, really, it's kind of pointless. You've basically created a trade embargo. Like there's no real trading going on. And that's basically what's happened now. We have completely cut off trade at this point, theoretically, with China. So now no matter what we do, China's like, look, we're not going to play this game anymore. We're basically saying we don't need you. and or you need us more than we need you. So, you do it. You do whatever you're going to do, but we're going to be fine. And in all honesty, China has more potential to be perfectly fine with this more than we are. And that is because China has actually worked towards this moment. They figured out way back in Trump's first, and they kind of been already working on it, but they realized quick, like back in the first Trump, when he first did the tariff war with them back in 2017, that they needed to ensure themselves just in case someone like Trump, or even apparently Trump himself, got back into office. They would, and this kind of stuff happened again, they would be okay. So they've been working their industries, building up their industries, their industrial services and or of goods and stuff is way more productive than we are. Their shipping uh, uh, market and everything is way more invested in, and then also on top of that, they're investing into the companies, and also incentivizing their citizens and stuff to buy domestically and everything. So, and granted, they are an authoritarian regime, and they do have a lot of control built into their system. So they basically can say, and people kind of have to do. They're not really democratic to the very minimally, anyways. So it is easier for them to control in that manner. But like I said, they are incentivizing them to do that, so that they have their own currency. So they actually have a system built at this point to where they literally can run on their own with themselves. And then they also have built trading agreements and partnerships with a lot of countries, just like we have, to where, basically countries are playing the flip thing of, well, okay, are we going to stick with, America, or are we going to decide China? And when it comes to trade, what you really want is stability. I mean, you want something that's stable, something that you can continue to grow, or you see future opportunities in growth. And when you look at us and the volatility of our markets and the decisions of our leadership versus China, who is showing strength in their markets and strength in their leadership and in their industries, there is an argument for countries to make this kind of swap, and strengthen their relationship, if not necessarily completely cut off a U.S., but strengthen their relationships with China, so that if things go awry with us, then they at least still have a strong trade partnership where they can continue to get, trade and make money and build their industry and their economy. So it's this is the problem with the Trump strategy, and in his Liberation Day, plan of just tariffing everybody. It was completely insane for them to do that. You can make an argument that there needed to be some sort of a tariff plan put in place to build our industries in, to strengthen us against China, not necessarily against China. I guess that's really the wrong word, but to protect ourselves to some degree in certain industries, where we didn't want China to just take off in that industry, and if we wanted to remain the stronger economy for a particular industry. You can make an argument for tariffs to be placed in strategically, on certain goods or on certain industries or whatever, to protect and maybe even incentivize companies to invest more here than in China or whatever, for that industry. There was clear argument there, no problem, and for me in that. Tariff, just a blanket tariff, though, even a blanket tariff just on China doesn't make sense. Tariffs are not meant to be used that way. When they were previously somewhat used that way back in the days that Trump seems to concentrate on, the late 1800s and early 1900s, which he is coining, apparently for him, the Great American Era, that I don't think a lot of people would say the same. The reason why he calls this the Golden Age is because that was what has been coined, the Gilded Age, in that time. And the wealthy of that time tried to coin it the Golden Age then, and that just didn't happen. It was the Golden Age for them, but for the majority of people, it was not. Great wealth was earned in that time, but it was only on a handful of people, and everybody else struggled, and it got worse for everybody else. And that's what I've been trying to warn this whole time with tariffs, from the moment that Trump started talking about this new golden age, that's what he meant, that a golden age for the wealthy. When he says when he's tried to coin this here recently, make America wealthy again, he doesn't mean everybody. That needs to be understood by people. He does not mean everybody. He only means the few of his buddies and people in his aura, in his bubble, in his 1%, or even 0.1%. He does not mean for everybody. So, what we need to do, and this is continuing, this is causing his idea should have been targeted strictly to China and strictly in certain industries and goods. To target even Canada and Mexico is ridiculous. Yes, we have Mexico and Canada are technically our largest traders. China is number 3. But we have the largest deficit with China. We have a massive, literal deficit with China. Where Mexico and Canada, yeah, we do have a somewhat of a deficit with Mexico, but it's not critical enough with the way we work our trade between Canada and Mexico. It benefits us more than it hurts us. So to make these fights with them is completely asinine as well. Your only argument really for any country to have had some sort of implementation of tariffs, which was the only good point that he somewhat was making in his first term, although he still even then went about it wrong, and he's now going about it wrong even worse. You have a good argument to, like I said, specifically target stuff, but just doing blanket tariffs on all kinds of countries that we do not have deficits with, on a, like I said, year over year basis, we are actually growing with them. We have good relations with them, and want to continue that. You are starting to isolate. It's an isolationist type strategy where you're isolating our country from everybody else, creating animosity amongst everybody else. And the argument is to strengthen us and to bring back stuff to us. But in unifying our country, or unifying trade in our direction, but what you actually wind up doing is you causing so much volatility with other countries that you're actually causing them to kind of coalesce and join and strengthen bonds instead of strengthen with us. So that's what I'm seeing happening is a lot of countries are starting to have talks with each other, even countries that normally wouldn't really have talks with each other, even countries that somewhat don't even really like each other. I mean, we had, just a couple weeks ago, or right after all, or right before the Liberation Day, we had, we found out that Japan, South Korea, and China was having talks. Not necessarily that they were creating a plan, or like actually like going into an agreement, but they were having talks to kind of like, look, I know we've had our differences, and we do still have differences, but in the in the state of what is looking like is happening with the U.S. and the global market as a whole, or what could potentially happen, we might need to have a strategy to protect ourselves or protect this side of the world in a case of something just going crazy. And to have those three countries even decidedly having that type of conversation should have been an eye opener that something might not work here. So this is causing it when you are creating a bonding type of like action to happen where it normally wouldn't, because of actions that you are predictably taking, or claiming that you're going to take, and ultimately you did. This is causing a lot of, like I said, a lot of countries to come together, and they're coming together, if not explicitly against us, just as a protectionary kind of way against us, in the actions that our leadership is taking. And so this is not creating stability. Our actions, the actions that Trump is doing, is not creating any stability. And that's what even the markets kind of require, is stability. And when you've got this, up and down, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to do it big, I'm going to do it small, I'm taking it back, but we're going to do it again. Like, you create this environment where nobody trusts you. Okay. And this even makes it complicated for companies to invest in the U.S. because they find our market unpredictable. That's that's what the market has grown to, even more so in the past couple of decades than it was, originally. Like, it's become more of a predictor. Like, they are forecasting further and further out into the future to make decisions today. And so they want that stability to be able to predict as far out as they can for, a growth or whatever, where to invest. So when you've got this day-to-day chaos going on, the market does not work very well in that. That's the reason why we had that constant fall. And then even from a leaked, like, at that time, it was considered a lie, although it ultimately did come to pass. It was fake news in the moment, or found to be fake news in the moment. The market made a big jump when it was it was leaked that there was going to be a 90-day thing, but then it come to be not. They realized it wasn't technically like a legitimate source. The markets fell back down, and then of course when Trump made his decision, or released his decision, the markets jumped back up. But even that jump wound up being temporary, because then people started to realize, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, these raised tariffs on China are still going to cause a problem. Even the flat 10% tariffs on a lot of countries is still going to cause a problem. So the market is still volatile. It's still unpredictable. It's still not showing the ability that investors would want in order to make investments, where they, it causes even this 90-day, even the 90-day pause, it causes companies to just kind of sit, because they don't know where things are going to go within the 90 days, or even after the 90 days. They have no way of predicting what's going to happen. So they would rather just sit and wait. That's what you've caused, a stalemate in the industry, where they'd rather sit and wait instead of investing where they are afraid they might wind up investing the wrong way. So this is not really helping the economy whatsoever. We're kind of being pushed into this stalemate where we're not really going to have growth, and we're more likely going to continue in the direction of a recession, which is what we've been doing. And that was what ultimately caused Trump to kind of give this 90-day thing, because apparently it came out afterwards that he actually noticed that the bond market was falling, which really threw a loop in his whole plans and the Republican whole plans. Because the idea in stock market bonds is that, it's like a seesaw kind of thing. When the stock market falls, bonds go. So people pull money from the market as it's falling, and they put it into bonds to protect their money. And then when the market's coming back up, then they move that money back to market, to those market assets to grow money. And there's a balancing effect in the market. And so that's what they were banking on. If they flunked the market, that people were going to put money into bonds. And when you put there's also a balancing act that goes between bonds and interest rates. If bonds are up, interest rates drop. And if bonds go down, interest rates go up. So what they were hoping was going to happen, in order to force interest rates to come down, to help the housing market, to help, and a lot of other loaning markets, they were going to force the what they were considering, and argumentatively correct, that the market is inflated, but they were going to sink the market to have people put money in bonds, so that then that would drop the interest rates and allow people to have more flexibility in loans and getting loans or whatever. And some people would look at that as, regular consumer people being able to get loans, but it also affects companies getting loans as well, which is probably more what Trump and them are concerned with in the first place. But either way. But what was happening instead of that money going from the markets to the bonds, the money was just being taken out and put somewhere else. They were noticing that the bond investments were also dropping. So now you've got a total collapse of the whole industry happening. And this is a bad thing. When you have money not going into the place where people could actually use to invest, people were just taking the money out of the market and putting it elsewhere, into another market somewhere, or actually finding a lot of people were putting it into gold and stuff like that. So you've got a total collapse of the market happening. And once they realized that, they were like, oh shit, we've got to do something. This is not working. So that's when he backed off. Because like I said, for starters, the whole thing was messed up. The whole thing should not have happened. It was a bad calculation by Trump and his team, the team of advisors that advised it to begin with, which apparently was possibly even done with just GPT chat or whatever, or some AI program where they got this formula to begin with. It is complete. It was all based on a lie, in order to do something that they thought would benefit them, but then that ultimately didn't happen, and it was causing a complete crash, like further than even going into a recession, like going to a complete depression if it continued. So they had to do something quick. And while that action has in some way stopped the fall, it's only really just created a stalemate. And now the direct war with China is going to ultimately continue the fall, maybe at a slower rate, but inevitably it's going to continue to fall until something happens there, until somebody gives and we try to get a better balance in the economy. But ultimately, the chips have already falling, and people there's this false impression amongst a lot of Americans that think that, oh, this is a great country and everybody loves us. They all want to come here, so they must love us. So, we are the greatest country, and we're the most loved country in the world. That has not been true for a long time. Yes, people like coming here for the economy, but there is a lot of external discourse about just how great the United States is in relation to other countries. And we are not in that sort of argument of, oh, we just love, they're just such a most amazing country ever, whatever. There's a lot of people, a lot of countries that have a lot of disdain for America because of actions that we take in the economy, tariffs, sanctions on certain countries, the volatility that we create in governments, our military actions. I mean, there's a lot of disdain for America outside of America, more than what people really realize in America. A lot of people. There's a lot of people that notice it, but a lot of people who don't. And what I'm seeing from this is a lot of people outside, because I do follow some external like channels and news stuff, chatter, and a lot of people outside are not liking this. A lot of people actually are putting themselves on China's side than the U.S., even in this trade war, that they're seeing something bold. While Trump likes to think he's being bold, they're actually seeing China being more bold, because they're seeing somebody who's actually finally pushing back against what they consider is the bully, and that's America. America is actually seen more of a bully than an ally in a lot of cases, even with countries that we consider allies. So this has already created a problem that will take a long time to rebuild, to gain those trusts back. And it's more than likely not going to even begin to be mended as long as Trump is still in office. But even after he's out of office, it depends on who would be back in office and whether they can actually show a complete 180 on policies and, the ability to have discussion around trade or whatever the case. And also still the fact that there is a certain part of this population that still defends and backs someone like Trump, which reflects a part of our population who has the same ideology. So there's already, so it creates this, sense in the U.S. that, there's a part of the U.S., yes, maybe it's more focused right now on the administration and the leadership, but there's also this underlying thing where there's a portion of the U.S. that we really can't trust. They have this mentality of isolation, America great, America first, and fuck everybody else, that it creates this distrust in the rest of the world. And there's always going to be that like unstable factor that someone like Trump could potentially come back in power at some point. And unless we are able to completely squash that idea, it's going to be hard for us to build those relationships back. Like, honestly. So that's the problem that I see. is that I'm afraid that the damage may be done to a point that not necessarily there's no return, but the return is going to be slow and um, is going to cause problems, is going to make things hard for America to really grow like we would like, or to continue growing like we would like. And then seeing that the benefits of that growth. So, you can't have such chaos like this. This whole strategy, and this seems to be the Trump strategy. It's a Trump strategy in everything, whether it's the economy, immigration, domestic, agencies and assistance programs and all this kind of stuff, like this complete chaos, whether it's outside the U.S. or inside the U.S. Like there's constant memes out there of it's just like a bull in a china shop. You're just hitting shit and not knowing how much damage they're really doing, not realizing how much damage they're really doing. Or not, and even to some degree not caring. And of course, on my first short, I was talking about when the initial announcement was made of the 90-day pause. I made the argument that it does seem like there's some type of money heist going on. And that's the other part of this discussion, is that there is good reason to believe that there is some inside trading corruption going on here. Because this happens multiple times now. This is the biggest time it's happened, but this is not the first time since Trump took office that he has said something or done something that seemingly purposely caused the market to fall, to then turn around and reverse it to make the market go back up. And this has happened now. This is like the fourth or fifth time this has happened. Although this was the biggest time. And then the kind of weird post that he made before the announcement, basically saying, "Hey, this is the time to buy. Now is the time to buy." And then whatever it was, a couple hours later, he makes the announcement. And coincidentally, there's evidence to show that there were fairly aggressive buying going on within 10 minutes or so before Trump made the first post about time to buy. There were indicators of somebody or groups of somebodies were making some heavy investments that just came out of nowhere right before that post. And then that post created a little bit of a hike where people then started buying in anticipation. And then once he made the announcement, boom. And then even afterwards, we have seen, there's video of in the Oval Office where Trump is basically gloating about how these billionaires beside him had earned so much money. One of which was like 900 million and the other one was like 2.5 billion in that one day. So I'm still hold to that there's multiple facets to this going on. And that was just sort of this, and it's not like we don't know this type of stuff happens or has happened. I mean, it's been evidence of it before. There's been multiple, moments where there's been some in Congress try to go against this, try to stop this type of action within the government. And they don't even have to release, anybody in the government doesn't necessarily have to release any kind of information up to like 30 days after. I think April 15th is like the next deadline for things to release. I think that's what AOC was talking about the other day when she was questioned about this whole scenario on what was happening. I think she stated that April 15th was the next date. I haven't seen where anybody else has really stated that. If they're saying that it just had to be 30 days after the fact. So maybe there's an argument that they don't necessarily have to release it. No, you don't have to release it maybe till May. I don't really know. But either way, it's still after the fact. It's done. And then that's even if they comply with releasing the information. So, yeah, there's several facets of that's going on. And I think it kind of all ties together. I think it is all a part of it. So I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't really like going against what I said in that post. I still feel like in that short, the to the point short, I still feel like that is a major part of it. But it also had to do with the markets and how bad they were falling and showing, this just drastic collapse in the making. And they had to about face quick like. So anyways, that's all that. I guess all we can do now is just sit and see where it goes from here. Whether anything actually because that's the only other that's the other issues that MAGA world, the people around Trump and everything else were acting like, this, you just don't understand how good this was. This is amazing. This is the art of the deal. This is him at his best. When there was no evidence of any kind of deal being made. As a matter of fact, we don't even have evidence. Like it's not like they've released phone records or conversations or anything like that. We don't even know this claim of 75 countries calling him is actually true. He could have just made that shit up. And then on top of that, that's the other part that I almost forgot to even talk about. So I know this is already a long video, but it's going to get a little bit longer. Is on top of that, the fact that in the official stuff they're talking, they're announcing and talking about, the 75 people and all these countries are talking, wanting to make things. But then he goes and talks with this group of, I guess, investors or whatever it was, and he makes these claims of or he says that they're differently, as if I had all these countries calling me and basically kissing my ass and things like that. That's literally his words. So it's like you're making this like you are trying to make deals and stuff, but then at the same time, in certain arenas or groups, things are getting released about what you're saying, and even other people. I mean, we have the whole JD Vance, calling the Chinese, what was it? Chinese peasants, and that's been going viral in China. You've got the people in the administration putting down and like talking shit about other people, other countries, while you're claiming that you are trying to make deals. Like, you can't act like you're going to make a deal with somebody like genuinely and with sincerity, but then at the same time turn around and degrade them in conversation. Like, that's not going to make those countries or people, come to the table all like, yay, we're making a deal. I mean, it's going to actually cause more animosity, because now they're looking at you like, oh shit, you think we're just suckers. Oh, you think you can talk shit about us? Yeah, we may have called and said like, yeah, okay, let's try to make a deal to kind of stop this, but while Trump's sitting there acting like, yeah, they were sitting here begging me, they were kissing my ass, they were doing all these things, they were just please. Um, when even if there were countries calling, then it was probably more of an adult conversation. Like, okay, look, this is silly. We can work something out. This didn't have to go this way. So if you want to back off, then we can talk, okay, and we can have something. We can change some policies. Like it was probably more like that. It probably wasn't so much this begging, pleading, ass kissing thing. Some countries and some people maybe, but I don't think it was to the extent that they're trying to make it. Or but like I said, either way, you're not creating like this honest environment of talk when you're going out and talking shit about those that you are trying to make a deal with. Like, it would be one thing if you've made the deal. I mean, that's still bad, but it would be one thing if you've made the deal and it's all said and done and then you talk shit. Now the deal's made. I mean, yeah, they could argue coming back and going against the deal or whatever because you talk shit. But I mean, at least get the deal done before you start shit. But you got people in the administration talking shit before any deal's even made. It's just stupid. It's adolescent. It's childish, and that's what is the overwhelming arc of this administration altogether. It's just complete childishness, and just making decisions and doing shit that is just so crazy and chaotic that it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, thank you for joining me. And if you like the content, like I said, please consider subscribing, like, share, all that good stuff. And I've got more stuff to talk about. We're going to get into the other stuff, immigration, Middle East, all that kind of stuff like that. I've got a couple of videos I got to get out. So thank you very much, and until next time, and catch up on everything, because I know I got a lot of catching up to do. So again, thank you very much, and until next time, peace, clear talk. I'm out.